pleasure.
Hello, I am Deb Coviello, the Drop-In CEO. And as always, I'm grateful that you've dropped in to really enjoy another episode of the show where week after week, I find the most amazing leaders who have great backstories and share their insights with you. And just know we do this podcast because we sincerely care about those C-suite leaders and those up and coming to navigate their challenges, their opportunities with confidence. And this week, it is my pleasure to introduce Eric Allen, who is a powerful business driver whose entrepreneurial instincts and clarity of vision has carried multiple companies through rapid change and continuous growth. He is currently the Chief Sales Officer for Balance Aesthetics and Wellness, previously the COO, and he has had major roles in leadership across multiple brands, including Mitsubishi, Astral Brands, Jimerson Enterprise, and much, much more. But I'm not going to steal his thunder. He's a dynamic person. I'm just going to say, Eric, thank you for dropping in on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So, to my audience, I am forever in search of people that I think really have great insights. I'm in the manufacturing space, electronics, food, flavors, etc. And we found Eric and we started a conversation, but he's not just a senior leader. He has unique thoughts about leadership, about how you can have excellence in execution. We're going to go there. I just love meeting these new individuals and share their gifts with you. But without further ado, Eric, I would love to pass the mic back over to you to share a bit about yourself personally and your career journey so we can get to know each other.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. As you stated, my name is Eric Allen. I've been in the operations space for quite some time. I don't want to give my age away, so it's been a long time that I've been in operations. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've stayed here my entire life. I haven't wanted to go anywhere else outside of inside of the States. I've traveled many countries and continents throughout my career, personally and professionally. And Atlanta still is always, in my heart. So I've never wanted to leave. So I'm still here. I just enjoy everything about it, from a business perspective to the cultural perspective to just a big melting pot. And so it has served me really well in my personal and professional life. So I dive a little bit into my professional career. So I started actually with Mitsubishi Motors, as you stated, and I started from the ground. I was in college and was needing a job, and I found Mitsubishi and applied and started at the bottom. I literally started as a processor. And once I started, the leadership team quickly realized that I wanted more than just to be a processor. I wanted to lead by example. I wanted to thrive. And I didn't know if I wanted to be in management. I turned it down many times, actually, because I've always been one that wanted to lead by example, but not tell people what to do. I wanted people to do what they wanted to do, lead their lives how they wanted to lead. And let them do them and I do myself. And so I was, going through my growth in Mitsubishi, and, my boss pulled me to the side after I turned down, multiple management positions and said, what's with you? You have so much talent, you have so much drive, you lead by example, but yet you don't want to be considered a leader. And, I gave him my perspective on it. He said, that's the wrong way to look at it. And so he really chastised me and really gave me a new mindset on what leadership should be. And that you shouldn't let it waste just to be a leader and not be leading. And so he really changed my perspective on management and how to manage. And so my training started there. And if many don't know about Mitsubishi, Mitsubishi is a Japanese automotive company. And when you think of that, you think of lean management, lean, Six Sigma, just process driven. And so I was fortunate, although I didn't want to necessarily be in management, I was fortunate that I was in a company that had the perspective that they had on management. and just what management is, how it's process driven, how it's analytics driven, how it's lean driven, lean management, and all of that. And so I was fortunate to really be trained how to truly lead, how to truly manage a company, not just manage a team, but manage a company. And so that is where I really got my foundation. I credit Mitsubishi to my entire career because they really taught me how to manage lean, how to manage people, how to create processes, how to really don't make a decision that's emotional. Every decision that you make has to be analytical, it has to be numbers driven, has to be with a purpose. And so, but I'm a very personable person. So I had to blend the two together. And I had to learn how to continuously be analytical, continuously be um, driven by numbers, but also have a personable perspective for my team. And so I blended those two together and really created a different style of management to where I lead by example. I lead with emotional intelligence and integrity, but I also lead with numbers and with analytics in the back of it without being emotional. So blending those two together has been pretty unique how everything's turned out.
You've got so many nuggets in here. And while you come across extremely humble, there's such great insights in what you shared here. But I want to just go back to your humble beginnings where you were seen as potentially a high performer. Your boss came to me, tapped you on the shoulder multiple times. You were already seen as a leader, and maybe you realized it, but you didn't want to lead others. But let's just go backwards. How did you arrive at a place that you're a go getter, that you were seen as a leader? Was there anything in your upbringing or your community that prepared you to be seen that way?
Well, I was raised by a single mother. I have a brother and a sister, and we were raised, as three kids by a single mother. And so she worked multiple jobs. She worked tirelessly. She never took a day off. We could never take a day out of school. So, she really taught us how to work and
Yeah.
how to push and how to succeed and how to just drive. And it wasn't something that you tried it, it was just instilled in you. It's built in. And so that is what drives me even to this day, that mindset, that you keep pushing, don't let anything stop you. And then I just tied all the other professional
Mm-hmm.
teachings and learnings, together with that drive. And, it came out to be what it is.
And what's your mother's name? And is she still an influence in your life?
Absolutely. She's still with us. Her name is Roxy Allen. And so she's been my great motivator in my life. And so that's what constantly drives me.
So beautiful. And, sometimes we have to celebrate who we are and recognize the legacy of others because I too, sometimes I said, I'm not going to be that fantastic. I'm not going to be famous.
Right.
My kids are going to be the generation that whatever. But then I also have to like give myself credit, like, wait a second, because of the values and because of it is the grades and because we're going to talk to you at the dinner table,
Right.
that now I'm seeing my kids have the same values and they are becoming productive citizens. So a lot of what we see starts with community, starts with family. We have to give recognition to those important people that lay the foundation in our lives.
Absolutely.
One of the other things that you said I thought was really interesting was, well, first of all, kudos to Mitsubishi of a core competency, a core strategy is focusing on leadership development. Because I think
Right.
so many companies miss that. They focus on the bottom line, top line growth. What are the results? And will hire great leaders, but they don't invest so much in giving
Absolutely.
you the essential skills. Um, well, the thing I thought was really interesting is while you were there, you learned how to lead a company, not just a team. And I'm wondering if you could maybe give us a little bit more context about that as you grew as a leader. leading a team or leading a company?
Absolutely. So we were a dynamic part of the company in that we were so it had four different DCs in the country. So they had a DC in Atlanta, which was the primary hub, had one in California, one in New Jersey, and one in Texas. So these four facilities, really, you found that you had to operate on your own. And so you weren't going to be given a lot of support. You weren't going to be given a lot of know-how in getting things done. You had to really figure it out. And so my mindset is always to be the best, not no excuses, no shortcuts. You just learn how to be the best. And so in the training that they gave us, it was strictly on how to manage a company. And not only just that department, but how do you run this company? How do you you had so many different areas of the company. You have manufacturing, you have distribution, you have operations, you have transportation. All of this is in under one roof. And so you're bouncing from different departments all of the time. So you're learning many times not without knowing. You're actually learning how to run an entire organization just by your small world that you have. So it's different companies inside of a company. And so that's teaching you how to run the company. I was fortunate enough to be in positions to where I started connecting and discussing thoughts and strategies with HR. And so they were still in the corporate office in California, but we had a one-on-one relationship to where now I'm understanding the human relations side of things and how companies, have to be strategic in that part. And then you had your operations, you had trainer, we had a training facility on site as well. So it was just every facet of a company was under that one umbrella. And so instead of just having one department that you had to, be responsible for, you actually was learning how to run an entire company.
So I got to go here because you bring up a really important point. I meet so many people. Again, I was once. You become a subject matter expert in your craft. I was in quality and operations,
Yeah.
operational excellence. And yes, you interact with other organizations or functions. You learn a little bit about what they do, what the inputs, outputs, what are the points of connectivity. But you said something about, like, by going through these different departments, you started to talk about strategy. And what I find so often is that you've got managers that might become directors, that might become VPs, but they've never been given the opportunity to learn what does it mean to see the landscape and build a strategy
Right.
versus just executing on the orders cascaded from the mountain. And I had to figure it out on myself, but it seems to be lacking. So, what was it that transition point from, okay, I know how to run a department, to you now starting to discuss strategy and create strategy? Talk to me about that because I want other people to think about how do you make that jump from just being a tactical expert to really being a person responsible for strategy.
Well, the beautiful thing that I'm so happy about for my career is that I started at the bottom. And so I learned everything just from doing it, and it's so many executives that I've met over the years that never was on the ground floor. They may have, been fortunate to have a connection, a network, or whatever that can get them into a position. But I was fortunate enough to start at the bottom. So I was able to see every department, every procedure, every task, and really understand what it not only that it needed to get done, but how does it get done? That ground level strategy on how do you do this? And then you can break it out to be process driven. And that's why, so much of my career has been on process management and process thinking and process driving is because you start understanding every step to a process. And now even I think in my day-to-day living is a process. different. It's just steps. And that's how I think. And so that was why I started thinking that way, is because you had to learn from the ground, and now you have to put these packages together, or these, these processes together, all of these steps that to be excellent, you have to put all these things together. And so step by step, we had to understand how to do it. We had to start doing time studies to make sure we understood what it was to be the best. And when you're training, you want to train processes, time studies, and really, reshoring, managing that process, rethinking it based off of what the results are to get those ultimate results. So it's really just step by step training, managing, all of that is starting to be built and then executed on.
And so I can see that. So moving around from department to department, figuring out what the issues were, closing gaps to get to certain results, copy paste. And little by little, you see the connectivity between the inputs of one process and the outputs and how it affects the other thing. And then you start thinking like, well, why are they got a backlog over there? Why are they having, training issues over there? Or why are they having defects over there? Because you kind of know the end to end process. You become kind of a supply chain expert where all of a sudden you can see things and ask questions like, why are we doing this, or why are we not doing this?
Exactly.
That's almost like the precipice of becoming a strategic leader, because now you ask better questions based on context and perspective, and you actually open up people's eyes, and then you say, oh, that's the problem we should be shoring up. Not necessarily we need to do a training procedure over here. We lack a overall system for effective onboarding of new associates. Ah, that is strategic thinking.
Absolutely.
Um, Now, what I thought was quite interesting. So again, I will say there are a lot of chief operation officers, chief sales officers. And when I look at your bios on LinkedIn, again, others, they just say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And,
Right.
here's my ROI and here's my numbers. Your profile is not that. You stand out as a thought leader. That is why I wanted to bring you on here. And one of the things in your LinkedIn profile, as you go through again your backstory, but also it talks about your success formula for excellence in execution, position, and strategy. I would
Right.
love for you to share a little bit about this framework that you came with, and the meaning and the importance of it.
There's anyone can have a strategy.
Yeah.
The key to it is execution of that strategy. And to do that, you have to have the foundational processes to actually execute. And so, my strategy comes from the bottom to the top. Okay. So I need to understand what the issue is. I need to go back and really dive into that issue and create a step-by-step process of that issue. I need to do a time study on that issue. Mm-hmm. Because I want to understand exactly what it takes anybody to do it, not just myself or not just another staff member or someone that I'm bringing on to do the job. I need to know, everyone needs to know truly what does it take to be optimal in this position or this particular process. And so, we start from the bottom, and then once we have all that data in place, all that information in place, now we can create a strategy. Because we know step by step everything that needs to be done to be excellent in that particular thing that we're trying to accomplish. And now, once we have all that, we've created the strategy. Now we can execute, and we can execute with confidence that we know exactly what the output should be, what the result should be, and we know where the challenges should be. And when we bring someone on, now we can't be told that this is this and this is that, because we've actually done the work to go through it and to make sure we understand every piece of that puzzle. And then we can be, true leaders of it and really be able to coach and engage them into how to be the best at it.
So I appreciate that framework. And I guess, from what I'm hearing, is the foundation is having a deep understanding of the business and all the data that supports what the strategy needs to be.
Absolutely.
Obviously, getting the results, you have to be, crystal clear about leading people in the right direction and having a robust execution plan. But you also talk about position and stick to it. So you can plan a strategy, you can execute a strategy, but you talk about a particular component of position and stick to it. So what are you seeing? Are people like they kick off a strategy and they just go off the deep end? What do you mean by position or sticking to it?
Well, we're living in a society now where we want things easy.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, our mindset is so short, that we're constantly bouncing from, and it's social media. It's so much information that's thrown at us on a day-to-day basis that it's hard for us to keep focused on one particular thing.
Mhm.
And so many times you have to just, put your bridles on and just focus in on this one particular goal that you have, and then just stick to it. Make sure that you understand what that end result needs to be, and then you have the drive to make sure that you get there, and not let nothing stop you from getting to that goal. So it's just constant drive, constant dedication, constant wherewithal to do the job, to be excellent at it, and to not take anything less than that.
I actually think of these three items here, that's probably the most important because you can plan based on data. I mean, that's the DMAIC process. And then obviously you can execute, deploy, resource, project manage to get the work done and report and repeat. But sticking to something because there's a clear purpose and vision versus getting derailed from the next shiny penny or the sky is falling or there's a new initiative, sticking to something takes discipline and courage because if we believe in it, for the long game that it's going to benefit the people, the customers, et cetera. That's the hardest one that I find people get derailed on.
Absolutely.
So, Eric, you are an amazing professional, and I applaud you for putting so much thought leadership into your LinkedIn profile because it makes you stand out, and that's probably why we're here today. But if you had to, I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. You're an ultimate professional here. I'd love for you to maybe share a little bit on the personal side, community causes that you care about, personal interests of yours, because I think I definitely get you as a professional and I respect it, but I would also, what makes you different or stand out or make you a little bit more memorable?
On a personal level, I really take a lot of time to myself to just really recalibrate a lot.
Mm.
I grew up playing chess, and so and growing up playing chess, it just helps you to constantly think 4 or 5 moves ahead or 4 or 5 steps ahead. And so I always encourage every child, every parent to teach their kids or get them some coaching on chess and really develop that in their lives because it's so important to just your day-to-day living, day-to-day understanding of who you are. It helps you to really focus, helps you think many steps ahead. It helps you to not only think about what you're doing, but also think about what others are doing.
Mm.
Because when you're sitting in front of a chessboard, you're sitting across from someone else. You have a chessboard in the middle, and while they are preparing for their move, you're thinking, okay, what are they thinking? What move might they make? And if they make that move, what am I going to do? And so, it just really helps you to really lock in mentally and really watch what people do, watch who people are, watch what they're thinking, and then you take that and you are thinking on what are my moves, what are my thoughts. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that. I love the park. I love live theater. I love jazz, so I'm really into just the arts and really cathartic thinking and just how you just navigate life in peace. My life's all about peace, all about tranquility, but also just being just thought minded in the next approach to what you're doing and
Mm.
what you want to be.
It's very calming and very leveling. And I completely understand because it's so easy social media,
Yeah,
life, elderly parents, children, significant people in your life. It can be a rat race. And yes, maybe there are times in our life we're just on the go, 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 but don't let it life pass along too far before you realize there's a time to reflect, a time to think versus just do. And you'll realize in the process, what am I meant to do? Or, hey, I do need to take a time out every once in a while just to settle and calm the brain and also the body as well, because
absolutely,
whatever the brain is doing, the body is following and vice versa. So I
absolutely.
appreciate that about you. I've learned that later in life and I'm much happier because of it.
Yes,
Similar to chess, I curl, I throw stones on ice, and it's called like chess on ice. And you're
yeah,
constantly looking at the conditions of the players, of the ice, of the stones. And if you
right,
call a shot and it doesn't go exactly, and oh, by the way, what are they going to do next? My husband is constantly talking to me about, Deb, you need to be thinking more steps ahead, not just one or two, a
right,
lot of steps ahead. So you can kind of play the odds and what's risky, what's less risky, et cetera. So
absolutely,
chess, curling, both are great sports.
absolutely, absolutely.
So thinking back to that leader that pulled you aside and said, hey, you need to be a leader.
Right.
And look at you now. Again, you went from chief operations officer to chief sales officer. Congratulations on a great career. It, Thinking back to that, I mean, they said something so important to you, and you've listened to his advice and ascended. What might you share with our listeners now about leadership? I'm going to just basically give you the mic one last time. If you could leave some thoughts with my listeners, what are some advice that they should embrace if they want to really become leaders and impactful like yourself?
Sure. So I think you have to get the foundation right.
Okay.
You have to understand, who am I? What am I trying to accomplish? What is my why? What do I want to give back to society and to people? And you really have to just say, my purpose is to, number one, be an example. Number two, have the great foundation that it takes to be a leader. You can't take shortcuts. You have to really know what it is to be, what is a true leader. You have to really understand it, and it means so much for different people. So I think you have to dive into what it means for you, and then just always be original, always be yourself. I see so many people. It's great to take classes. Training classes is great to do all of these things, but you have to take these things and then apply it to who you are, and not lose that perspective of yourself. You know, but to start, you gotta understand who you are, and that you're different, you're unique, and that no matter how many books you read, how many schools you go to, um, you can get the degrees, you can get the knowledge, but it also needs to tie back into personal belief, who you are, and then taking that and then truly, structuring it to be that person and that leader that you are. I think so many people are leaders and don't know it, or haven't been given the permission to lead, with by somebody in their lives, by somebody in their networking. You really, I think you have to be given the permission or the guidance of knowing what type of leader you are, who you are, and that it's okay to lead.
So impactful. And, when I think about summarizing this conversation, somebody believed in you, and then you ultimately believed in yourself and have become the leader that you are now. But I would encourage you, if you're not already, to now lead by example, mentor, coach others. You could be exactly the person that creates those leaders of tomorrow that may not see that leadership in themselves, and just tapping them on the shoulders and said, guess what? You can
Yeah.
be. So your voice needs to continue to be heard, not just here on the podcast, but if you're already speaking in other stages, community, keep doing it because your message is very strong. And so I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You've been a great guest. I just want to say thank you so much, Eric, for dropping in on the show, on the podcast. And I just want to wish you well and continue success.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.